2 weeks ago, I talked to a man named Frederick Brennan for the first time.
Hello?
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going okay. Sorry we had a little trouble connecting this morning.
That's okay. You're in Los Angeles?
Yeah, it's still morning technically for another half hour.
It takes about 3 seconds of small talk with Frederick to understand his point of view, which is that the world is a shitty place, and the consolation you get is just being relentlessly candid about that. Where in LA are you?
Van Nuys.
I've been to LA a bit, but I've never been to Van Nuys. Is it nice?
No, it's the shitty area. That's why I've never been there.
Why? How come you're there?
Uh, I'm poor. Okay, anyway,
Nice to meet you. I really didn't know what to expect from Frederick because he's known for having done two really extreme but opposite things. He started the image board 8chan, notorious internet cesspool, defended it for years, but then very publicly repudiated it. Like, he actually fought to get it taken off the internet. What do you do with that, though? Like, how do you, like, this was this thing that you spent a ton of time working on that you built. How do you look back at that now?
oh, I was just wrong, you know? And obviously, I think that those of us who are kind of at the beginning of internet history, I guess we can call it, are going to make a lot of mistakes. And obviously, unbridled free speech does not work. It does not make a positive community in any sense of the word.
Frederick left 8chan when he was 22. But the reason he's talking about it now, 4 years later, is that he believes he's uncovered a secret. The identity of QAnon, 8chan's most infamous account. QAnon, obviously, is the internet troll who pretends to be a highly placed government leaker whose posts have sparked a massive, paranoid, occasionally violent movement. If 8chan is the biggest mistake Frederick's ever made, QAnon is like that mistake's malevolent idiot child, and he wants Q stopped. Frederick is saying that as the creator of 8chan, the person who originally wrote the code for the site, he can see all sorts of clues pointing him to the identity of QAnon. Frederick's story is a journey through multiple circles of internet hell. These are places I usually try to avoid. I think most people do. But listening to Frederick, I realized that the problem with doing that, it means that the people who run those hells remain much less accountable than they would otherwise. So today, that's where we're going. Frederick's story starts in 2013. At the time, nobody in the world had heard of 8chan. Frederick was just a very broke young man living alone with a disability.
My name is Frederick Brennan. I'm 19 years old. I am a computer programmer and I live in Brooklyn, New York.
This is from a 2014 documentary.
I have osteogenesis imperfecta, which is a bone condition. It's commonly known as brittle bone disease.
Frederick says by this point, he's already broken his bones 120 times. He sits in his wheelchair. He looks very small, a lot younger than his age.
Spend a lot of time, doing somewhat dangerous things. Like cooking is not really safe for me because, a pan of boiling water is about as big as I am. So I have to be really careful when I'm cooking not to spill it on myself.
Frederick did not like this documentary. He felt like the producers were just trying to gawk at how difficult his daily life was. How he had to use a special tool to press the elevator buttons. How he struggled to open the front door of the building. The only reason he'd agreed to do it was because he says that they'd promised to mention his new image board.
I tried to get them to include it in their piece and they didn't. Oh, I was so pissed when they didn't. Because they promised that they would, and when they didn't, it didn't even get 1 second. I was really mad. But
were you just participating in that documentary to promote 8chan?
Yes, correct. Yes, that's why, yes.
Back then, Frederick's whole goal in life was to make the best, most popular image board that had ever existed. After all, he'd spent half his life in these places. I talked to journalist Dale Baran. He's known Frederick for years.
He was one of the first incels. He was like deep into the incel community. So
oh, I didn't know that.
He ran an incel board, and the philosophy there is we're doomed to be on 4chan and 8chan forever. That we're born this way and we're never going to escape. That's the philosophy.
He found every available hell on the internet.
Yeah, I mean that's the hell of 4chan, where you're kind of doomed. It's called the black pill, the nihilist pill. Where you say, I'm not even a conservative, I'm not even a fascist, I'm just a nihilist.
Frederick was very angry about the circumstances of his life. He was angry that his mom, who had the same condition he did, had chosen to have him in the first place. He was angry that his parents had split up and he'd been left in a foster care system. 4chan was a place where he'd found people as angry as he was, But now he wanted 8chan, his website, to surpass it. In 2014, he gets his chance. 4chan decides they've had enough of Gamergate, they shut down their board. And the Gamergate audience travels to Chan's looking for someone willing to set up a new board for them. Most everybody turns them down, except Frederick. Overnight, 8chan goes from maybe 100 posts a day to over 10,000 an hour. Traffic is surging, so much so that Frederick actually can't afford to pay for the bandwidth. And he announces, unless someone can step in to help, his board's going to go down.
It would have been over. Like, I could not get a loan. Are you joking? They don't give loans to people in wheelchairs. So, who would even give a loan to 8chan anyway?
But then, he gets this message that'll change his life, almost entirely for the worse. It's from a man named Ron Watkins, an 8chan user based in the Philippines. He tells Frederick that he and his father, they can help. His father owned 2channel. This is the original Chan, Japan's biggest image board, a website Frederick had always looked up to.
That was the reason I had so much trust in him, because I knew, that's basically a very powerful brand in this space of anonymous communities. And I figured, well, if he's running 2channel, certainly he can handle this site.
What Frederick did not know at the time was that the creator of 2channel was claiming online in Japanese, a language Frederick did not yet speak, that this man, Jim Watkins, had actually stolen 2channel from him. Jim and Ron Watkins did not agree to be interviewed for this story, so you won't be hearing from them. But Jim Watkins has disputed the characterization that he stole 2channel. Of all the mistakes that Frederick had made, besides maybe starting 8chan, trusting this father-son duo, Jim and Ron Watkins, this is the one that plagues him. Frederick agrees to Jim Watkins' offer. Jim will host and eventually own 8chan. Frederick will run the site as his employee. In the years to come, Watkins' 8chan will inspire mass shootings. It will morph into essentially a compound for the paranoid political cult of its most famous poster, QAnon. But back in 2016, all Frederick knew was that these two seemed like his saviors. Plus, they told him one additional thing. It actually helped clinch the deal. They'd seen that documentary about him. And they said,
we live in the Philippines. Nursing care is really cheap here. Medical care in general is really cheap here. They offer to hire a nurse, to hire this, because they know that if they can pay somebody $100, $200 a month to stay with me all the time. You know what I mean? So they knew that physical access to somebody like me was control.
I serve a risen Savior. He's in the world today. I know that he is living, whatever men may say.
Even in the world of Chanboard operators, Jim Watkins is unusual. He's 56 years old, former helicopter repairman for the U.S. Army who moved to the Philippines in 2001. There, he ran NT Technology, a company which these days he claims hosted websites with photos of Asian women in bikinis, which isn't true. It hosted porn. There are a few profiles of him. They always sort of hit the same wacky beats. The weird videos he posts of himself singing hymns or unboxing expensive fountain pens. They usually mention his pig farm. It's kind of frustrating because you start to feel like these eccentricities, they're like a smoke screen that stops you from ever actually seeing what his motives are. Frederick didn't do much homework on Jim Watkins. He checked some stuff on Wikipedia, and then he packed 2 suitcases and flew to the Philippines to begin his new life. Do they pick you up at the airport? When's the first time you actually meet them?
Yes, Jim did that too, yeah. So I flew to Manila via Hong Kong, and Jim flew from Manila to Hong Kong to pick me up in Hong Kong and then bring me to Manila.
What was he like in person?
Yeah, I mean, when I first met him the first time, I was like, wow, this guy is really a stereotypical pornographer guy.
Wait, what do you mean?
The first day I met him, he is waddling up to me, chain smoking this cigarette, hitting on all the flight attendants. In between going from the airport to our gate, right? We stopped to eat something, and he's hitting on the lady behind the counter. Hey, gorgeous. Hey, beautiful. Most of them are Chinese and don't even know what the hell he's saying, but I mean, it was just creepy.
They arrive in Manila, and there he meets Jim Watkins' son, Ron, the guy who'd originally messaged him. And the two of them get along way better. He and Ron, it turns out, have the same excitement and affinity for just nerding out about image boards. What did he actually just look like? Like, what did Ron look like?
Yeah, back then, he's very good looking, honestly. He could be a model. His hair was very, well kept. He just looked like the guy who would be in charge of 2 Channel,
So he just looked like a handsome tech guy?
Yeah.
Online, there are countless hours of videos of Jim Watkins, but there is very little on his son, Ron. You see the same 2 photographs over and over. Frederick said there was actually an internal rule. He was told that Ron did not ever want to be recorded. And even just talking to him in person, he was cagey. Like, basic facts about his childhood were very hard to come by. So he just wouldn't talk about his youth with you.
He wouldn't, or he would tell you outrageous lies that just sounded so dumb. Like, he told me after high school, he went to become a monk and studied in a monastery. And I never believed that.
It'd be that story one day, and then it would be a story about being a playboy in China the next. Both of the Watkins came across as very unreliable narrators. But Frederick was getting what he wanted. Jim Watkins had set him up with an apartment to live in. He had a health aide. He had steady work. And for a couple years, things were good. Here's Dale, the journalist.
And he likes his life in the Philippines. He finds a wife there. He gets a little more religious and goes to church and finds a community.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And during this time, he's working over there for Watkins, and he realizes the chants are toxic. So he says, just put me, I'll run 2 Channel, and I want nothing to do with 8chan. And he leaves 8chan to Ron.
So April 2016, Frederick has quit 8chan. He doesn't work there. He doesn't post there. But he's still working for the Watkins family. He's in the office with them. He's in the same Slack. And he says at the time, he tries to get Jim Watkins to shut the site down. But it doesn't work. And it's starting to become more clear to him what Jim Watkins actually wants out of 8chan. It's not money, because this website continues to repulse advertisers. Is 8channel supposed to be a money-making endeavor? Like, do they care if they run it at a loss?
They don't care. What they want out of 8chan is power. And they don't care if it runs at a loss, as long as they kind of get the same level of power in the West that they've managed in Japan. That's what they want.
In 2016, 8chan went very hard on MAGA. And when Trump won, Jim Watkins tried to convince people that his site had been a part of it. He told BuzzFeed News, quote, I think the users of 8channel helped get Trump elected. You've got 1 million people a day looking at 8channel on a good day. It's huge. After Trump won, Jim Watkins essentially tried to get into the Breitbart business. He figured that on 8chan, he had this audience of Trump-loving conspiracy theorists. Why not build them their own news site? So he tried. He made this far-right conspiracy news website called the Goldwater. Filled it with stories about stuff like the Clinton body count, Trump's secret war on pedophiles.
It's no surprise to find out that FBI agents have discovered evidence of the Clinton Foundation sending wire transfers to organizations affiliated to the terror group ISIS.
In the site's videos, Jim Watkins has hired local women from the Philippines to read scripts written by freelancers. In others, Jim Watkins has cast himself as the broadcaster.
Good morning. I'm Jim Cherney, and this is Hardline.
I don't know why he calls himself Jim Cherney in these, but he's in front of a bookcase wearing an ill-fitting suit.
How about the Clinton Foundation pay-for-play debacle? The FBI actually deleted that when they gave immunity to the aides of Clinton and agreed to destroy the laptops that the deletion took place on.
The Goldwater failed. It turned out the young internet trolls of 8chan did not want to hear conspiracy theories from the site's 50-something-year-old owner. Mainly, the Goldwater just became a punchline. But what would happen later would convince Frederick that everybody, including him, had underestimated Jim Watkins and his ambitions. You see his power as almost like a dark, twisted internet version of like Rupert Murdoch or like Succession or something like that.
Correct. Yeah.
But he's like a Rupert Murdoch no one's ever heard of, and when people write about him, they're just like, oh, he's a weirdo, he's a weird guy.
I hate when they do that because it's like they miss the entire story. And it's easy to just focus on the wacky guy running 8chan at a loss. Oh, the wacky business dude, and he looks so silly. He reads hymns and plays with his pens. But, if you really peel back the layers of what this is and where he wants it to go. Because in Japan, the far right is ascendant and very powerful there. And that's what he wants for the U.S. too.
Frederick said that in the office, Jim Watkins would plot about this stuff with Ron.
I really thought sometimes that they were deluded when they would talk about like their kind of strategies to like use 8chan to seek power, because I just never thought it could come true. Like Q totally came out of left field and surprised me.
Q, of course, is QAnon. The whole reason Frederick and I were talking in the first place. The most successful, damaging political hoax of this century. Frederick believes that Jim Watkins would see the rise of Q on 8chan and then hijack control of the account for himself. And the story of how that may have happened, it took us back to the scene of something I never thought I'd see. To the room where a bunch of liars and trolls had first invented Q. The room where Q took his baby steps. After the break, the birth of a lie.